I'd like to welcome the witnesses. I'd like to begin by complimenting the Department of Foreign Affairs, Mr Burgess. Many of my constituents in Kerry were amongst that number of 6,000 who were anxiously seeking to be repatriated in very difficult times whilst abroad, stretched across 129 countries, as you said, across the globe, and very, very grateful for the proactive assistance that was received from the Department of Foreign Affairs, the helpline, the Mercy flights, and also providing connectivity with other flights where necessary. So I do want to acknowledge that from the outset. I specifically want to address a question from a health point of view to Mr Breslin. As I've said, I'm from County Kerry, which is a very, very strong tourism county. We are hugely reliant upon it, last year generating in excess of 500 million from tourism alone. We really do want to open up from a tourism point of view, but we absolutely want to open up safely and securely and from a best practice health point of view. And I note from your report mandatory self-isolation is being mooted, and I'm just wondering if there's potential, or if you are currently looking at the notion of rapid testing at airports, airport testing with a very quick turnaround. That would make a huge difference to counties like Kerry's and to other tourism areas, but particularly to it would breed confidence if you have the turnaround really, really quickly. So could I ask you if that's been considered, but again considered from best practice health point of view?
Thank you, Deputy. A couple of things. One, I think, is that the best means by which we have generating activity within the country is to keep the virus low, and that would allow us all to circulate, including to go to beautiful parts of the country on the west coast, and hopefully that will be something we'll be able to do as the phases continue. In relation to overseas travel into the country, there are difficulties with a testing regime. The tests that you apply, it's only at particular points in the cycle where that would actually identify. So you could have non-detected COVID-19 for somebody in the early days of them having contacted somebody with COVID-19. It just wouldn't be in the respiratory tract. And what you would give them then would be, it's not detected. They would hear that as, I don't have COVID. And when they then got symptoms, and there's quite a period where they're asymptomatic, when they then got symptoms, they dismiss it as, well, it's not COVID because I got a test done. So whereas countries have looked at it, there are issues around it in terms of the message it sends out. The most important, I think, thing is that people are aware of their own symptoms and they respond quickly to that, and also that we wouldn't have people coming from areas where community transmission is above that of our own country. That is hard to achieve because the knowledge that we have of different countries is predicated on them having a testing regime that is similar to our own, and not every country has that. But the EU has talked about corridors and different relationships between countries, again, all in subsequent phases. I don't think anything we're talking about is immediate, but they are potentially things that are being worked out at European level for further phases in the reopening process.
Okay, thank you, Mr Breslin. Could I ask Ms Graham from the National Transport Authority, just in relation to, I note from your opening statement that phase one, the take-up, if you like, or the expected take-up of those needing public transport far and exceeded what you had anticipated. And I just wonder, going forward, how we are best placed for phase two and phase three, and are we actually looking at a scenario maybe where some people will have to stay at home because they don't have access to public transport to get to work? And I suppose secondly, to ask you very specifically, the 2 metre rule, how that is impacting on your availability of access to public transport, and your view perhaps on the 1 to 2 metre. Thank you.
Well, just on the social distancing, so in terms of, as I outlined in my statement, the impact of the 2 metre social distancing has reduced the capacity on our bus by about 20%, and on rail to a lower figure than that. So it does significantly impact on the numbers that can be that can travel on public transport, and it does mean that, and as we have said, what we are suggesting and recommending is that, as many people continue to stay at home and not travel during the different phases of the reopening of the government's roadmap, because there is restrictions in terms of public transport capacity, in terms of social distancing. Moving to 1 metre obviously increases the capacity. It would double the available capacity, but really it's a matter for government and the public health and the Department of Health to make recommendations in relation to that, and we will follow the guidance associated with that.